Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm AndyRC and today I'm checking out the Eachine Falcon 210. Now this is a very cheap way to get into brushless mini quads. I'll put a link in the description to it because prices of these things always change, but at the moment there's 46% off this model, which is absolutely incredible. So it's a ready to fly brushless mini quad. It's a 210 size model. So starting off with the specifications, we have got some nice green motor protectors here. As you can see, green is the theme of this model, and then the motors are 2204 2300 kV motors. They aren't really branded, but I guess they are a Eachine make. So then we have got 5045 3-leaf propellers, so it does take 5-inch propellers, but more on that a little bit later. And we have got 20 amp ESCs, so it does come with a 1500 milliamp 3-cell battery, but 20 amp ESCs means that we can use a 4-cell, so you can upgrade it to a 4-cell. It has got a Naze 32 board, we have got a PWM FlySky receiver, and then we have got a 40 channel VTX. It's 200 milliwatts, it's non-switchable, and then we have got a CMOS FPV cam up the front with a field of view of 110 degrees, and you can move the angle of the camera with this one. So it's a carbon fiber frame, very low profile. We've also got some LEDs at the back as well, which are connected to the DIN, so you can configure them, and they do have their own setup out of the box as well. So there's a couple of things that I have had to change. The first one is the antenna. So it comes with this antenna here, which is a cloverleaf antenna, but it's a left-hand polarized antenna, and my gear's all right hand polarized, so I have had to switch that out with an on-way antenna. So it's RPSMA for the connector there. And also I mentioned earlier that these are 5-inch propellers. However, I do believe it was originally designed for 4-inch propellers because everything is just so close. So out of the box we've got an XT60 connector here, and this was just sort of flapping around and getting caught in the propellers. So I have added a cable tie around here just to keep everything nice and neat so that the propellers don't hit anything. Also, the receiver's antennas were just sort of flopping around as well, so I have stuck some cable ties on the ESCs because the ESCs also aren't cable tied, and I would recommend sticking cable ties on those as well. So I've just sort of put the antennas under there to keep them out of the way. And another thing I noticed is we have this camera plate up the front here for a HD camera, but if you are using the 5-inch props, then just look how close these propellers come to the camera module. There's no way you are fitting a GoPro on there, or a Yi camera, or even a Run cam or something like that. The only camera that will fit, and only just, is the Mobius Mini. So I've stuck that on there, just use some cable ties there, and that just about fits. And I am worried about it in a crash because I think those propellers would absolutely destroy this camera in a crash. Yep, so another thing that I noticed about this model is that the receiver has been mounted on the outside, and it's a big receiver. It's the FlySky PWM receiver, and that is because they couldn't find any space in here because it's such low profile, and I can see that getting damaged in a crash. The other problem with this as well is I mentioned it's got a Naze 32 board, and the USB connector, if you want to configure it, comes out of the side here, and the receiver is in the way of that, so you're going to have to sort of take off these sticky pads here just to get to it. I don't know if you can see there. So it comes with a Naze 32, but there's an option for a CCD as well. My preference is the Naze 32. Now, it did come with Betaflight flash to it, and I have gone in there and changed a couple of things because there wasn't a lot of stuff set up. It's a very lightweight machine, I should say. It comes in with the 3-cell battery at 478 grams, so very light. Of course, it would probably send it over 500 grams with a 4S, but I think a lot of the weight is down to the fact that I'm using a Mobius camera rather than a GoPro, so yeah. Now, there is a tiny little bit of flex in these carbon arms. They aren't super thick, but it shouldn't be a problem. However, it is a all-in-one X-frame, so if something does break, we're going to have to replace that top plate there. But the top plate does seem to be separate from all of the electronics, so I don't think it's going to be too difficult to actually take off and replace. So we can change the VTX here. There's a little tiny button there on the side, and a long press goes through all of the bands and a short press goes through the channels there very easily. So we also have got this sort of foam plate underneath as well, which isn't really necessary. All of the motors are screwed in, which is nice, so we shouldn't have any motors coming off. So let's see what else you get in the package. So it's an RTF, so you get given one of these Eachine i6s, so it's a rebranded FlySky i6. So just like all of the other Eachine controllers, you cannot change any of the settings, so what you have to do is switch it off and then press in these two trimmers here, and then you can go into the settings. And I recommend that you do that because out of the box there's no mode set up or arming or anything like that, and channels 5 and 6 are set up to these here, so you're going to want to change that. So if we go into the setup there and go down to the aux channels, I've changed channel 5 to switch A and channel 6 to switch C for my flight modes. And to save those settings you have to long press the cancel, remember, and then that is set up for your modes. I didn't need to do anything else. You'll notice that this is a mode 1 transmitter. You can select on Banggood's website mode 1 or mode 2, which is quite nice. So we are also given a B3 charger as well. So it charges off the balance port for the battery, and then you're given a bind plug as well in case you lose the bind. That goes on one of the channels of the receiver. You're given a spare set of props, except black ones this time. I should mention about the props, they have these spinners on here. However, you can't use a socket set to get them on. They've just got a little hole here through the spinner, and you just have to tighten them up with, say, an Allen key or something like that. They are directional as well. So of course this is an RTF, but in order to do FPV you are going to need some FPV goggles, so I would recommend some of the cheap goggles, as this is a very cheap beginner setup. I'd recommend the Eachine VR007. However, I'm going to be using the Fat Shark Dominator HT3s with the Diversity Fat Shark receiver on-way antenna to match the one I've upgraded to, and the Menace RC patch antenna as well. So here I am in the Betaflight configurator. Now the Naze32 does have a bootloader solder pad on there, but you have to take the top off to get to it, so I'm just going to use the version of Betaflight that it came flashed with, which is version 3. So I've got the USB lead plugged into the computer, and I've also had to move the receiver out of the way to access it as well, which is annoying if you want to tune it. But you can see there it says COM19 at the top there, and one good thing about this model is you don't need the battery connected to power up the receiver, so that's a good thing. So I'm just going to connect to it here. I've got expert mode enabled. Let's go into the ports. So just the UART one selected here, as it's a PWM receiver, so no need to have anything else selected. If I go into the configuration here, quad X setup, no board alignment, I've got one-shot 125 enabled on the ESC motor protocol. I've turned motor stop off. That was switched on out of the box. I turn it off because I like to have the motor spin up when I arm. I've also got this option selected here because I will be arming via an aux switch. The minimum throttle I've left at 1050. This was out of the box settings and it's fine. Max throttle is 2000, which again is fine for Fly Sky. So then if we come down here, the VBAT is enabled, however there's no VBAT connected up. You can see there it's set to 0 volts. However, there is a spare pad to add a buzzer, so there's no buzzer on this one either. It's a very cheap setup, but if you wanted to connect the VBAT via a cable and also add a buzzer, you could do that, but it's currently not functioning here, so you probably want to use one of those external voltage checkers for the battery, which I will be doing. And then the receiver is set up for PWM, which is correct for that Fly Sky receiver. Down here, as this is an AES32, we've got 1K and 1K selected as the PID loop frequency there, and everything else looks like it's turned off. So let's go into the failsafe here. So it's set to drop out of the box and it works fine. I've tested it. Into the PID tuning and it had stock Betaflight PIDs. I've just boosted the D up because I found that it flew out of the box with a couple of jitters, and I think that's because it's a very lightweight setup. It's probably tuned to carry a GoPro or something, so I've boosted the D up. Probably could reduce the P rather than doing that, but I'll try it, see how it flies. And then I've also boosted a Super 8 to 0.8 as well, and then everything else is stock here. So let's go on to the receiver, and you can see the channel map is AETR for Fly Sky, and if I move the sticks around everything is fine there. I've got AUX 1 as mentioned for arming, and then 3 position switch here for the modes. So let's go into the modes. Now this was completely blank out of the box, so as I say, we have got my 2 position switch to arm, 3 position for angle, horizon and acro. The ESCs were calibrated out of the box, so no need to do that. They do not support BL Halley Suite, sadly, so there's not a lot you can do with that. And let's go into the CLI here. I'm just going to type version, and you can see that it comes with version 3 of Betaflight. Okay, let's go for a takeoff. Straight away I can hear that it's a fairly quiet model for a 5-inch. Very windy day today, 12 mile/h winds. Let's check out the punch on 3S. That is ample. Yeah, that's gonna give you some fun. Not bad at all, really. Definitely great for your first Miniquad, I would say. Ample. And it doesn't sound like a Formula 1 car on a 3S either. Let's try acro. Oh, it does acro fine. Even in this wind. Gonna need to get a voltage buzzer on it though, so I don't destroy the battery. Oh, this is nice and smooth and aerobatic if you want it to be. Nice smooth backflip and rolls. Oh, I'm having fun with this. This is a lot of fun, good for the line of sight as well. Feels really light for a 3S, and I guess that's because I just have that Mobius Mini on the front. Oh, this is too much fun. Okay, let's get it in angle mode, see if I can get a nice close-up shot for us. I think it's going to look good through the Mobius Mini, of course. We are stuck with that angle. I guess I could put a bit of foam underneath it, and that will flatten it out, but that will make it slow, wouldn't it? And we don't want that. Righto, let's come in for a landing and let's do some FPV. So I've had to cut the audio from the Mobius, and that is because those propellers are swinging so close to it. The sound is just absolutely awful from it. I'll just cut a little bit in so you can hear it, but yeah, the audio that you're hearing is not great either, but that is from the onboard microphone. So yes, it does have an onboard microphone if that's your sort of thing, but I tend not to use it while I'm flying. So I did have to drastically change the PIDs to what I had in Betaflight earlier when you saw me in the configurator, and I will overlay my PIDs here. Now I know a lot of people are going to say that D is way too high, but I spent probably about half an hour on the tune, and no matter what I did, I had to increase the D in order to get rid of a load of wobble on the pitch. And on 3S it's still not quite locked. It does need a little bit more time, but I was struggling with the weather again, flying between rain clouds, but I was getting a pretty good flight with this. And with this tune on a 4S I got a near perfect setup, so the extra weight of the 4-cell battery made the tune a little bit better. So a couple of things I'm noticing is I'm getting a clear picture through the FPV camera. It's a pretty good camera, but as it's a CMOS camera, when pointed into the sun, areas of the ground do go a little bit dark, but it's not too bad at all. There's a tiny little bit of noise filtering from the ESC / motors, but it's not terrible at all. And you can see here that even on 3S there's plenty of power there. I think this would be a fantastic model for beginners. So cheap at the moment, at the making of this video as well, so I think this is a fantastic buy for anyone wanting to get into the brushless mini quads but don't want to spend a fortune. At present, the RTF version of this is cheaper than the Eachine Wizard, which is another popular bind and fly. So I think that will have people interested. Okay, it doesn't have an on-screen display, so you are going to have to get a voltage checker, an external one, but that's not a problem. But that's the same for the Wizard, actually. That one doesn't have an on-screen display either. And yeah, really enjoying how this one flies. So with the Mobius on top, you do get a couple of inches of props in the screen, but actually this is the 135-degree version of the Mobius off eBay. So if you get the normal 110 version, then you're probably not going to get the props in shot. Now the Mobius was handling this model really well. In higher sunlight there was a little bit of jello, and I will show you a 4S flight after this one. But sadly I completely ruined this 3S battery. It was completely puffed when I landed because I didn't put a voltage checker on it and I flew it to the absolute death. So in a moment you'll see me come round and crash. But there you go, that is my review of the Falcon 210 from Eachine. I really like it. I'll put a link in the description if you wish to get one. I'll leave you with a flight with a 4S battery. Cheers.